The EP Talks podcast is brought to you by Everyday Principal, the leading learning management system focused on and committed to K-12 administrator professional development. Andre J. Wicks, founder and CEO, is your host. Please enjoy this episode with guest principal Chris Shearer. Inform, influence, inspire. All right, I want to welcome everybody to Season 1, Episode 1 of EP Talks. I'm here with a friend of mine and an esteemed principal, Chris Shearer. Chris, just go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from, what level of principal you are, and then we'll get into some Q&A.
Yeah, I am Chris Shearer, as you said. I'm the principal at Johns Creek High School here in Johns Creek, Georgia, about 25, 30 minutes north of Atlanta, here in the very hot South currently, very hot South. So, and this is my, 26th year in education, 22 of those in leadership. And this is my 11th year as a high school principal.
Excellent. What other levels have you been principal?
I was principal at a middle school for 4 years before this. And I also spent a very brief time as an assistant principal in elementary school. I did about 2 years at the elementary school level as an AP.
Is that all in Georgia, or have you been elsewhere?
No, all my experience has been with Fulton County schools. So all 26 years in one school system, haven't left it, have stayed committed.
Yeah.
So have seen a lot of change, obviously, throughout the years, but it's been good. It's been very good.
Are you from the area also?
No, I grew up in Kentucky. So I moved down here after I graduated from college in 93, just before the Summer Olympics were here in 96,
Okay.
and was doing other things before I got into education when I first moved down here. But I consider this home now.
Well, thanks for the introduction. I wanted to connect with you today just because, you've been someone that's been connected with Everyday Principal since its inception, almost a little over a year ago. And over the course of that year, obviously the principal network has grown. And, when we send out our blog posts each week, it's reaching tens of thousands of administrators from across the country. But we wanted to expand our offerings a little bit. We wanted to connect with people in different ways and connect with people in a way that allows us to listen to stories too. I know that you've been in the game for a long time, and really the theme of this first episode is on challenges and opportunities. And so I just wanted to know if you could share with us, in your experience, 26 years, you've seen a lot of things come and go, and just wanted to hear from you. What are some of the challenges that you see?
I think the biggest challenge we face, especially currently in education, is that the world now, what our kids enter into, whether it's after high school or after college, is such a, fast paced, very dynamic environment, which didn't exist when I came out of high school and when I came out of college. And I think our challenge as educators is how do we prepare kids for that, and what we've done in education is probably not what we should be doing, because it's, this kind of idea of rote learning, very kind of finite knowledge, isn't really important anymore in the information age when our kids can just get it at their fingertips, and so I think about, the skills that they need, the mindset that they need to succeed, or at least I think what they need to succeed, and I think that's our challenge, is to pivot and find how we do that. What does school look like, to prepare kids for what the world is, which is a very kind of strange, ever evolving place. So I think that's that's a huge challenge that we face every day.
Yeah. Something that you said resonated with me, and it's something that's always kind of been a little bit of a pet peeve of mine as a teacher and as an administrator is when I hear people say we have to prepare kids for the real world, and
Mhm.
it makes me wonder, like as adults, do we really know what the real world is? You know, do kids actually have a better perspective of what the
Yeah.
real world is, and are they navigating it maybe better than we are? You know what I mean? It's like sometimes I think that the adults, we have to challenge ourselves to step outside. You know, you reach a certain age and you get accustomed to doing the things that you do,
Yeah.
and a lot of times, you know, when you reach into your 30s, 40s, 50s, your world is shrunk. And so you have a distorted view of what the real world really is. So from that perspective, how do you keep yourself current so that you best understand what that real world is like so you can help your students navigate it?
I mean, to your point, the student perspective and student voice are extremely important to me. I have two student advisories that I work with. One that's only freshmen, the other one is upperclassmen. And so I'm leaning into those groups monthly, to get that perspective. From your view, what does it look like? What do you think it should look like? What is school like? Is it working? Is it not working? If it isn't working, why isn't it? And then terms of just what's out there, I challenge myself, to read a lot, to take a lot in, to engage with my parents, who are very successful, business people, what have you, leaders in the community, to kind of tap their brain and be like, okay, what does this look like now? Like when you're hiring people, when you're running your organization, like what is that? What do you want in people that come to work for you? What's important to you? So that I better understand, you know, what I can do to direct, whether it's my leadership groups, my teachers, the people that I work with, to think differently about, what we do, and one of those things that, we're challenged with now, jumping into something else is AI, is this, tool, this technological advancement that is, pretty awesome if used correctly. And I've challenged my teachers to find the way, to make that something that can support them, make life easier, better, more efficient, and model that for students, because previously when we saw technological advances, we let that get way out in front of us. We weren't modeling, and now it's kind of gotten away from us. And now with AI, we have the opportunity on a front end to be like, okay, this is what this looks like. This is how this can help. This is how it's used in work. This is how it's going to make you better. Let's accept it, not try to fight it as some tool that helps kids cheat, but a tool that can make them smarter, better, more efficient, is the better way to look at it, I think. And a pretty interesting journey, I think, that we'll be on here at this school for sure, this school year as we, kind of kick that thing around.
Yeah. No, it's funny. It's funny to listen to you. My wheels are turning as I'm listening to you talk about one of the newest technologies and one of the newest introductions to technology as a tool being AI. It makes me think about over the history of K 12 education, what the response has been each time there's a new idea or a technology that's outside of what we've been doing for the last 10, 15, 25 years. It makes me think about when the calculator was introduced to education, and it's like, oh my
Right.
gosh, our kids are going to be dumber because they're using a calculator. And each step of the way, though, what we've realized is that the technology, if used appropriately and if embraced, um, actually advances. It creates
Mhm.
opportunities for deeper learning. Along with that, something that you said at the top of the conversation too that really resonated, and everything that we've talked about so far really comes down to this, is around mindset. our
Mhm.
mindset around what we believe or perceive that the real world is and how we navigate that, our mindset around engaging in education from the student perspective and the adult perspective, our mindset around AI. All of it comes down to what frame of mind we're able to choose. And I
Mhm.
know at Pepperzac with my staff, one thing that we really, really focused on last year was the idea of metacognition, and not just thinking about your thinking, but also going a little bit deeper and really focusing on the granular level of learning how to learn, and how
Mhm.
powerful that can be when kids understand that process of metacognition and mindset. So, with that, like, talk to me a little bit about the perspective from adults and students. How do you prepare your staff and your students with the right frame of mind to engage in their learning?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely kind of a forward, growth, positive mindset person, and speak into that, talk a lot about that, model that, and because by the time a kid gets to high school, often they've made a decision about everything. They're a math kid, they aren't a math kid, they can write, they can't write. All of that has been set in stone, and from K-8, it's been proven that they are or aren't, right? And they kind of shut it down and no longer feel like they can get somewhere else. And my teachers, myself, all of us have to kind of break that down to your point and show kids that you can still advance in an area that you didn't think you could advance in. And it's like I'm reading Atomic Habits right now by James Clear, and he talks about those small wins. He talks about habit stacking, and it is that thing where you've got to commit to the process because you're not going to see the difference tomorrow or maybe next week or 2 weeks from now, but it is going to come. That success is going to come, whether it's in math or as a writer or whatever you're trying to advance in. you know we've got to do a better job as adults in modeling that for kids and keeping them kind of committed to the process and the grind, because it's not fun, ultimately, to kind of break through that wall that you thought existed, and now someone tells you that it doesn't exist. We're all going to be successful in math this year. We're all going to pass the state test. We're all going to get a 4 or 5 on the AP exam, like whatever my teachers are talking about, and then you've got to support 150 kids in getting to that place, which isn't easy, and some of those kids are going to, kind of fall down and get punched and these kinds of things. But you've got to be there to say, okay, it's okay. Stay committed to the process. It is working. Just recommit, lean in, maybe fork it a little bit, think differently about, what your approach was. I told, my challenge to my student advisory when we kicked off, I said, what's the one thing that you can change? The one commitment you can make to execute every single day that it's going to make a difference down the road this year, right? And we all talked about that, when they came in. One girl talked about doing homework as soon as she got home. Like it's something she's never done. She always puts it off. She starts death scrolling when she gets home. But she said, this year, as I'm a senior and I'm getting ready to go to college, I've got to be better habit wise, get things done on the front end, and then leave the stuff that's not important to do later if I have time. I said, okay, you've never done that before. Like next Monday at 4 o'clock, when you've never done homework, you've got to do homework. And then the next day you've got to do it. And the next day you've got to do it. You've got to commit, to the change, to the growth, and again, it's not easy, like James Clear talks about, it's a small thing, but you've
Right.
got to keep executing over and over and over again, to get to that point you want to get to.
Yeah. I love that book. I'm glad that you brought that up. I was re-listening to part of it just yesterday, and the point that you just made is exactly true. When people are thinking about, students or adults alike are thinking about, making shifts in habits. We Our initial thinking is that it's these monumental shifts, or we set
Mhm.
goals that are so difficult to maintain. It's not sustainable. He shares in his book about an author whose goal it is to write a sentence a day. That's it.
Mhm.
One sentence a day. Sometimes he writes a chapter. Sometimes he writes a sentence. But when the goal is to write a sentence a day, you're setting yourself up to replicate that habit over and over
Yeah.
it's achievable, right?
Yeah.
So no, that's awesome. So let's pivot a little bit. We've talked a little bit about challenges, which is something I know every principal in the world can relate to. But let's pivot a little bit and talk about, what are some of the opportunities? What are some of the things that you're seeing in Johns Creek, or that you've read about or watched, that are successes, opportunities for success?
I mean, as we continue to reframe coming out of the pandemic, get further and further away from that and refocus on the work, teaching and learning. One of the things that we've kind of revisited is what our PLC processes look like. What are they? What are they for? What are they driven for? What are we accomplishing? And really, that in the high school, especially, that group has always been very adult driven. What adults are doing, what's convenient for adults, that has been the conversation, not really students. Oddly enough, that's not really what the frame of mind has been. So, one of our reframing or refocus, the challenge that I've put forth to every single PLC in the building is that this year you've got to have a student goal. One student goal that's measurable, that's time bound, that when I visit or an AP visits, when anyone visits, we can be like, okay, what's the goal? How are we doing? And then most importantly, what are we doing for the kids we know aren't there? There's always a group that isn't where you want them to be. Like you've said, 100% of kids are going to do X. Well, you're never at that 100%. That's a very aspirational goal, but you're always, coming back to and thinking about, well, how do I get these kids closer to what I want all kids to be? I think is going to be a real game changer for us, at this school. We've also, finally, after 10 years of being a one-to-one district, have decided to purchase a learning management system, Canvas. I'm excited to see, the organizational opportunities, for not just for my students but for my parents, in kind of tracking and being better, about just the logistics of school. Just I think is going to be a great thing. And then the other challenge that I put forth to my staff this year was to really start thinking about the why again. And we talked about cynic, and we looked at some, another guy's kind of bit about the why, and to be, driven from the center outward, and not to be so focused on what you do and how you do it, which in high school is a huge challenge because my teachers love the what and the how. Like that's why they got in it. I'm like, college professor light, I'm a chemistry teacher, I'm a physics teacher, and I'm like, I appreciate that. Like 1,000%, don't get me wrong, right? But why in the world are you doing that? Why aren't you teaching in college, or why aren't you working in a lab, or, why are you doing this? Not getting paid a lot, great kids, all that kind of stuff. But what drives you every day to teach physics, to teach algebra, to teach English, to teach engineering, whatever it is, please start thinking about that, revisit that often, so that you don't get bogged down in what you do and how you do it. Because, to Cynic's point, those are not compelling things. At the end of the day, and I talk to parents about this, kids don't care what you do or how you do it. They really don't, right? And they don't remember it either, you know.
Yeah,
But if you're why driven, if you have this element of caring or compassion or whatever it is, that resonates, ultimately. That makes you this, unforgettable teacher, someone that kids want to come back and revisit and see how you're doing and update you on how they're doing. So that's been kind of a front of mind conversation, and probably something I'll revisit in my Sunday email to staff regularly. What is your why? Remember the student goal, to be far more student driven in our work than adult oriented, which is kind of where we've been and where high schools often are. So that's been kind of the challenge to my staff. And I think that provides great opportunity. Like, we're a high performing school, but there's still room to do even more or to be better for our kids, to see them grow more, to prepare them, whatever you want to look at. And it's these little things, thinking about your why, thinking about student goals, these kinds of things that can get you kind of over that hump, and getting more than what you've gotten in the past, which was good. It was good, right? But how do we become great at the end of the day and really change things and get kids really excited and jazzed to be a high school student, which is a challenge. They're typically not in that space. Like, ooh, I love high school. So trying to change that a little bit.
No, I love that. I love that, Chris. Um, we're getting close to the end of this conversation. I'm excited to have you back on here sometime though. It'll be fun
Yeah,
to come back and revisit some of these things. But I first just want to say, thank you for your leadership. It's energizing for me. I can only imagine what it's like for your students and staff to follow a leader like yourself. I was just kind of thinking in my mind, uh, a quick recap. Even in 20 minutes, so much to learn and take away from this conversation with you. Um, you're thinking around just setting uh, the mind around what it means, what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like to be a learner. I think that's so powerful. One other thing that really, really resonates with me that I hope our listeners and watchers will take away is your commitment to student voice is so powerful. It's so powerful. And I have to assume, without digging into your data and without surveying your staff and students, that the fact that you're asking for and listening to your students is contributing to your overall success and with student achievement. So
yeah.
encourage you to keep doing that. One last question I have for you is outside of Atomic Habits, what are you reading these days?
I mean, the my favorite book, or the best book I read this summer, was John Kabat-Zinn's first book on mindfulness. Wherever you go, there you are.
Mm,
Done a lot of work, around that, and the thing that struck me most in that book, well, two things, but one in particular was his quote that all you have is right now. That the idea of being present, and that really sat with me as I read that. I was like, okay, let me think about this, because I think about, and again, students, all of us, get weighted down by what was or what will be, and those things keep us from being fully present in the moment that we need to be present in, to be effective. And so I'm trying to kind of check myself, in those two spaces, not to let what has occurred weigh me down too much, learn from it, grow from it, move forward, and then not have the worry of what might be, keeping me from doing what I need to do in the present. And I'm challenging others, to kind of be in that same kind of state of mind. Not easy, not easy at all. I mean, there's a lot going on for people, and to be truly present is a real challenge. But that has been, one of, I love that book, phenomenal book. And that was the big takeaway from that book that really struck me this summer, and hopefully is going to kind of focus me and make me better as a leader, for this school year.
excellent. Well, stay in the frame of mind to lead positively, know your why, create great habits, and live in the moment. I love that.
Yeah.
Chris, thanks again for being part of EP Talks. Look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The EP Talks podcast is brought to you by Everyday Principal, the leading learning management system for school administrators. EP Talks is one product in the suite of assets Everyday Principal has to offer. Other products include EP Collaborate and EP University. For more information how Everyday Principal can inform, influence, and inspire learning for you and your school district, contact us today at everydayprincipal.com.